When did you realize that you were actually the villain? I realized slowly over time. I had a lot go on when I was in high school. I had this whole long comment about it written up, but I deleted it. What I was going through doesn't justify anything. There was a really nice kid who lived a few doors away from me. Never did a bad thing to anybody, as far as I knew. But his parents never had the talk with him, and he hadn't gone to sex ed yet. So when he jizzed for the first time, he didn't know what it was and started putting it in the freezer. Then he made the mistake of telling everyone about it at the skate park. I should have explained without making him feel like a freak, but I laughed my ass off. I told lots of people because I thought it was just a funny story. I didn't realize until later I actually made that kid's life hell. Everyone was calling him Mr. Freeze or Freezy Pop, even people he didn't know. He told me he got so mad at me sometimes he'd go home and punch a chair. I thought that was funny too, until years later when I look back at the facts. He was a really nice guy. It wasn't his fault nobody bothered to teach him about such basic stuff as what semen is. It wasn't fair at all. That was a shitty thing to do to another human being. And even worse to think it was funny. I was a fucking asshole. It would be cold comfort to that kid now, but I really think that realization changed me. This story reflects on a pretty tough lesson. The narrator realizes how their actions affected someone else and how ignorance can lead to unnecessary pain. It's interesting to see how time can change perspectives. It's not just about the joke, but the impact it has on someone's life. The regret feels genuine, and it's a reminder that we should think before we act, especially when it comes to others. When I got out of the military and got really depressed, I look back on the people I had in my life. Friends, and a lot of the women I had relations with were honestly genuine friends and very good girls. I was the asshole, lying and cheating, manipulating. I was afraid of committing to even a true friendship. I still feel horrible when I think about it. I finally got a taste of it, and it's awful when someone you care about so strongly hurts you so badly. I'm so sorry to everyone. I was lucky to have you in my life, and I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. The reflection here feels heavy. It's tough to face the past, especially when it involves hurting people you cared about. Acknowledging those mistakes is a first step, though. It's normal to feel regret after realizing the impact of your actions. Building genuine connections can take time, and it's good to see you're recognizing the value of those relationships. It seems like there's a desire to grow from this experience. My family started behaving differently around me. My older sisters and I grew up always poking fun at each other. We'd go back and forth and make fun of each other constantly. Rarely did it ever get too mean or personal. As we got older, my sisters did it less often. I didn't. I kept at it. I started noticing that when I teased them, they were a lot quicker to get offended than they used to be. Eventually, we would start arguing. They claimed I was being too mean, and my argument was that it didn't bother them before, so it shouldn't bother them now. And how dare they try to stop me from having fun when it was their problem, not mine. One day, I asked my younger sister, who typically didn't ever get involved in the teasing at all, if she thought I was wrong. To me, it was a rhetorical question because I was positive she was going to agree with me. She didn't agree with me at all, and it clicked almost instantly. It doesn't matter if they were cool with it before and now they're not. People change, and if I wanted to maintain a good relationship with my older sisters, I needed to respect that. It don't matter if I don't think something is a big deal. If someone else does think it is a big deal, and I care about that person, I need to respect their perspective. It's interesting to see how relationships change over time. What might have been fun before can become a problem later. The point about respecting others' feelings is pretty crucial. Just because something was okay once doesn't mean it still is. It's all about adaptation and understanding where people are coming from. Good on you for realizing that. It's a step towards better relationships. Just after the end of high school, I didn't have the best family life while growing up, and one day I realized that I was acting just like my mom would if she were in the same situation. After that, I had to think, and a whole lot of shit hit me. So many ways that I act like either my mom or dad. Things I absolutely hated them for while growing up. I like to say that after this I did a complete turnaround and became a lovely human being overnight, but that shit is heavily ingrained. I've basically spent the time since then slowly working at undoing all of those bad habits. It's common to see parts of our parents in ourselves, even when we try not to. Realizing those traits can be a tough moment. Change doesn't happen overnight, so taking the time to work on those habits is important. It's a process, and it's good that you're aware of it. Acknowledging these patterns is the first step toward making lasting changes. Keep at it. Progress takes time. Basically, in high school, we had this math teacher. She wasn't too good at handling rowdy high school kids, and everybody made fun of her in various ways. It could be really cruel, and I imagine it's one of the reasons why she was such a quiet, nervous teacher. Anyway, because all my friends were doing it, and because I hated school and most of my teachers, I took to making fun of her behind her back just like everyone else, and generally being a rude little brat in class. Now, what makes this awful is that, around my final years of secondary school, this teacher had the heart to take me in for hour-long study sessions after school to help me with increasingly difficult maths. If memory serves, this was mandatory for not doing homework, which is how I wound up going. And I wasn't exactly thrilled at the time, but now I realize that this teacher was really just trying to get me acquainted with maths, as she would with any other student, in spite of how rude I was and how easily she could have just given up and said, "Fuck it, this little jerk doesn't want to learn." But the horrible thing was, even after she started teaching me after class, and even after I started to appreciate her efforts towards the end of my year, I still gave in to peer pressure and made fun of her behind her back. I didn't have the balls to tell my friends what I really thought, or to openly acknowledge that I could be very wrong about people. These days, I'm pursuing a career that often involves programming and maths. And in addition to the fact that I find maths more and more useful each year, I'm also really starting to see how fascinating and elegant it is. I really wish that I'd been a smart enough person back in class to see what my teacher was trying to show me, instead of just mocking her like a little prick. It's interesting how hindsight changes your perspective. You realize the impact a teacher can have, even when you're being a jerk. The peer pressure back then makes sense, but it's tough to acknowledge that you missed out on connecting with someone who genuinely wanted to help. Now that you're in a field involving math, it's good you're appreciating it more. People grow and learn from their past mistakes, which is a part of life. I was in a relationship with just a really awesome person. Confident, calm, very aware of others. Someone who just always made the situation more fun and relaxed. She was so cool and had so many experiences that I got envious of her. I felt like I wasn't good enough, and I would react poorly to certain situations, act petty. Eventually, I had to stop being friends with her because I thought she was causing all this turmoil in me. I realized later that it's probably just me who needs to get my shit together. I feel like I'm not a whole person with all these problems, like a monster. I hate not being friends with her. I don't know if I ever can be again. It sounds like you had a pretty intense experience. It's tough when you feel that envious vibe kicking in. Recognizing that it's more about your own issues is a big step. It's normal to struggle with feeling whole sometimes, especially after a meaningful connection. Not having her as a friend must be difficult. Hopefully, you can work through these feelings and maybe find a way back to that friendship in the future. I realized that I can't handle people liking me too much. It feels empty. It's the process, the work, getting someone all the way to total dependence on me, hanging on my every word. That's what I was really looking for in a person. When I reach that point, I feel as though there's nothing to strive for. I'm constantly manipulating people around me from states of liking and disliking me, subconsciously, to keep up the game. I realized how I do this to people, but I can't stop myself because I don't even try to. I think I have a bit of a problem. Seems like you're caught in this cycle of needing control. It's interesting how you recognize the manipulation, but feel stuck in it. It's almost like you thrive on the chase rather than the connection. Maybe there's a deeper reason for wanting that dependence. A little self-reflection could help break the cycle. Just recognizing the pattern is a step, I guess. Put an order in for a pizza at a local place. I was starving as I just left work and said I want a specialty pizza, but the largest they had. Timed it correctly, so when I got to the pickup window, it'd be ready. I got my pizza and headed home. I looked at it while driving, and they gave me a small. I was already hangry, so I pulled a UI, SP, and went inside to talk to a manager. Once he came up, I was pretty blunt about them getting the order wrong. He looked at it and simply told me that actually was the large. I was defeated because it looked small as hell. Quickly accepted the fact that I was wrong, apologized, and left. I do eat like a garbage disposal, but I was also very hungry, or maybe their large pizzas weren't large, at least to my standards. Maybe all? I'm not sure. When I got home after accepting I was wrong, I even got a ruler to measure out 14-inch diameter. Still the bad guy. It's frustrating when you expect one thing and get another. You really thought you were getting a large pizza, only to find out it didn't meet your idea of large. That must have been a bit embarrassing, especially after making the trip back. It's normal to feel that way when you're really hungry. It's good you accepted it in the end, though. Maybe you should check the sizes next time. I used to work as a bill collector. When I first worked there, my friends at work used to egg me on to be a prick to the people we called. I once called a woman's house, and her husband answered. We had been trying to reach her for some time, and she kept dodging our calls. He said she was out buying groceries. I asked him where, and he told me she was at the local Walmart. I used my BlackBerry to find the phone number for the Walmart, called customer service, and had them page her to the phone. Needless to say, she was not pleased when she found out who had her paged. I was having a difficult time because of personal issues, and I tried to make myself feel better by being an asshole to customers. I deeply regret it now and wish I could apologize to the people I treated poorly. It's interesting how work can change your perspective on things. Using personal struggles as a reason to treat others poorly is common, but it usually doesn't end well. It's good to see you recognize that now and want to apologize. It's a reminder that everyone's dealing with something, and kindness can go a long way. Just hope those affected can find it in themselves to forgive you. It's a long story. Basically, when I was in my late teens, I had a huge crush on this one chick. She was amazing. But me and my friend followed this bro code that basically said we couldn't chase after girls because it just leads to anger, hate, and suffering. Well, against my better judgment, I started sneaking out with this girl. We went on some awesome dates, fancy dinners, hiking around in beautiful mountains, and the like. It was awesome. Everything was working out, and my friend had no idea that I was seeing this chick. This went on for years. Unfortunately, I was stupid and didn't think, and I got this girl pregnant. It started to get more difficult to hide our relationship from my friend. Well, one day he finds out about it, and we get into this huge argument and start beating the crap out of each other. It wasn't pretty. Honestly, I did some really stupid things in that fight now that I look back on it. I'd learned so much that I thought I could easily win this fight with my friend, but I was wrong. While we were fighting, my friend looked right at me and told me that the crowd I was hanging out with was evil. So I looked him right in the eyes and said in my most deadpan voice and facial expression, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. That was when I realized I was the bad guy because of how stupid I sounded. It sounds like you went through a messy situation. Trying to balance a relationship with a friend's code must have been tough. The fight and your realization seem like a turning point. The quote you used is memorable, but it kind of highlights the moment's absurdity. Sometimes, these conflicts can lead to some tough lessons about friendships and choices. Overall, seems like a wild ride for you back then. When I realized my so and I were having huge blowout fights that left us both devastated and emotionally drained around the same time every month for about 4 months. And it was always the week before my period. I realized my hormones would get so out of whack that I would obsess over everything that I disliked about him, get overwhelmed, and then cause an argument. I apologized once I realized what I was doing, and I told him that even though I felt like my complaints are valid, I should never attack him like I did. We haven't fought since, and I recognize when there is an actual issue and when the period monster is taking over my brain. It's interesting how awareness can change things in a relationship. Recognizing the pattern is a big step. Seems like understanding your own emotions helped in avoiding unnecessary conflicts. It's good to see that you've both managed to keep things calm since then. Being able to separate real issues from hormonal swings can really help in the long run. Just staying mindful about it makes a difference. This is a recurring thing for me, but I'll give an example of the most recent occurrence. There's a guy at work that I hate. Every minute I spend with him grinds on my nerves, and I find myself talking shit behind his back. In my defense, he started off poorly with me. I was training him. He did something incorrectly that I pointed out, and he corrected the issue in a sarcastic and snotty manner. Since then, if I'm honest, he's been a perfectly fine co-worker, and I doubt he would even remember the incident. But with my exceptional grudge-holding skills, everything from his cologne to where he chooses to stand, and even his willingness to help while on the job are indictments against his personality. I was talking to another coworker recently, and I realized that a long time ago, I became the asshole in our relationship, and while there are things I still don't like about him, he's actually not a bad human being, and I can cut him some slack. Seems like you've been carrying a grudge for a while. It's easy to hold on to those feelings when someone rubs you the wrong way. But recognizing that he's not as bad as you thought is a step forward. Maybe it's worth letting go of some of that irritation. People can surprise you, even the ones you don't get along with. Sometimes it's just about perspective.